Washington's inauguration in 1789 marks the beginning of the first U.S. presidency, setting foundational governmental practices. He forms the first presidential cabinet, creating a model for executive leadership and interdepartmental consultations. He oversees the implementation of the Judiciary Act, structuring the federal judiciary system crucial for national law and order. He maintains neutrality during international conflicts, particularly between Britain and France, emphasizing diplomacy over conflict. Washington's resolve is tested during the Whiskey Rebellion, which he addresses firmly and fairly, demonstrating the federal government's strength. His farewell address lays out his vision for America's future, warning against political factions and foreign alliances. Washington faces criticism for his slaveholding, a reflection of the era's complexities and the moral questions he contemplates in his later years. Washington's presidency sets numerous precedents for subsequent leaders, establishing enduring standards of executive governance. Recognized as a paragon of leadership, his integrity and dedication continue to inspire respect and admiration, securing his place as a fundamental figure in American history. John Adams assumes the presidency after George Washington, facing the enormous task of following a beloved founding father amidst rising political tensions. Adams grapples with the quasi-war with France, steering America through undeclared naval conflicts while advocating for peace and negotiation. His administration enacts the Alien and Sedition Acts, inciting widespread criticism and accusations of infringing civil liberties. Under his leadership, the United States strengthens its naval capabilities, a strategic move that bolsters American defense and shipping interests against foreign threats. Adams faces severe opposition from both the rising Democratic-Republican Party and factions within his own Federalist Party, complicating governance. He signs the Judiciary Act of 1801, reshaping the federal judiciary and ensuring a long-term Federalist influence on the judicial branch. Despite political pressures, Adams ensures a peaceful transition of power to Thomas Jefferson, his political rival, underscoring a fundamental democratic principle. Adams leaves the presidency with a mixed legacy, marked by his efforts to maintain federal authority and navigate a politically tumultuous era. Scholars continue to reassess his presidency, often debating his leadership style and decisions within the broader context of early American politics. Jefferson's inauguration in 1801 sets a transformative agenda focused on limited government and expansion of the nation's borders. Jefferson's administration secures the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, doubling the size of the nation and opening vast territories for exploration and settlement. Jefferson initiates the Lewis and Clark expedition to explore the Western territories, facilitating scientific discovery and mapping the vast unknown lands. Jefferson advocates strongly for religious liberty, emphasizing the separation of church and state, enshrining it as a foundational American principle. Jefferson's Embargo Act, intended to pressure Britain and France, backfires economically, leading to widespread discontent and economic hardship. While Jefferson personally struggles with the institution of slavery, his presidency does little to advance the cause of abolition, reflecting the deep contradictions of his legacy. Post-presidency, Jefferson focuses on educational reforms, founding the University of Virginia as a beacon of higher learning and innovation. Jefferson's legacy remains a complex tapestry of immense innovation and problematic contradictions, particularly regarding his views and policies on slavery. Scholars and historians continue to debate Jefferson's role, balancing his contributions to American founding principles with his personal and political flaws. James Madison takes office amid growing tensions with Britain, setting the stage for the War of 1812. Madison's leadership is tested as he navigates the United States through the complexities and challenges of the War of 1812 against Britain. The British invade and burn Washington, D.C., a significant blow to Madison's presidency, highlighting the vulnerabilities of the nation. Madison successfully concludes the War of 1812 with the Treaty of Ghent, restoring peace and affirming American sovereignty. Madison helps lay the foundations for modern American government, advocating for strong federal authority balanced by states' rights. His profound influence on American constitutional law and his role as a father of the Constitution continue to be recognized. In retirement, Madison reflects on his presidency and continues to influence political thought through his writings and correspondences. Historians continue to debate his presidency's impacts, appreciating his constitutional contributions while critiquing his crisis management. James Monroe takes office in a period dubbed the Era of Good Feelings, reflecting a brief time of national unity and political cooperation. Monroe establishes the Monroe Doctrine, a pivotal foreign policy that warns European nations against further colonization in the Americas, asserting U.S. influence in the Western Hemisphere. Monroe oversees significant territorial expansion, including the acquisition of Florida from Spain, enhancing the nation's size and strategic depth. Despite successes, Monroe's presidency witnesses the first major peacetime financial crisis, the Panic of 1819, which strains the economy and tests his leadership. Monroe manages rising sectional tensions over slavery, culminating in the Missouri Compromise, a temporary resolution to conflicts between free and slave states. He supports the development of national infrastructure, advocating for road and canal projects to foster economic growth and national integration. Monroe promotes American arts and culture, helping to foster a distinct national identity during a formative period for the country. Monroe leaves the presidency with a mixed legacy, celebrated for his foreign policy and nationalistic efforts, but critiqued for his handling of economic instability. The Monroe Doctrine, in particular, becomes a cornerstone of American foreign policy, underscoring his long-lasting impact on international affairs. John Quincy Adams, a former diplomat, takes office with grand ambitions to modernize America through infrastructure and education. He champions the creation of a national university and supports scientific endeavors, setting a precedent for federal involvement in education. His presidency begins under the shadow of the corrupt bargain, tainting his electoral victory and complicating his relationship with Congress. Adams faces staunch opposition from a divided Congress, stymieing many of his progressive policies and dimming his legislative successes. He maintains a steady hand in foreign affairs, skillfully navigating international diplomacy to uphold American interests. Adams's strong anti-slavery stance, although principled, fails to gain traction during his presidency, setting the stage for his later career as a powerful anti-slavery advocate. His push for infrastructural development, though only partly successful, lays groundwork for future advancements, highlighting the early visions of a connected America. After his presidency, Adams's influential role in the House of Representatives as a fervent advocate for civil liberties and abolition further elevates his historical significance. Modern historians continue to reassess Adams's presidency, often viewing him as a man ahead of his time, whose ideals and visions were only appreciated in retrospective. Andrew Jackson, known as Old Hickory, inspires the common people with his populist ideologies, promising to fight for the average American against corruption in Washington. Jackson vehemently opposes the Second Bank of the United States, viewing it as a corrupt institution that favors elite interests over those of the populace. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed by Jackson, forcibly relocates thousands of Native Americans, a deeply controversial act that has lasting repercussions. Jackson's tenure sees an expansion of suffrage to all white males, a significant democratization of politics that reshapes the American political landscape. Jackson's administration effectively deals with foreign affairs, successfully resolving trade disputes and solidifying American maritime rights. His destruction of the bank leads to economic instability, with the Panic of 1837 happening shortly after his presidency, attributed by some to his policies. Jackson's presidency ends with mixed reviews, admired for his assertive leadership and populist approach, yet criticized for policies viewed as autocratic or harsh. Historians and scholars continue to reassess Jackson's impacts, debating the merits and ethical implications of his strong-willed presidency. Jackson's approach to executive power leaves a lasting imprint on the office, influencing how future presidents wield their authority. Martin Van Buren assumes the presidency in 1837, immediately grappling with the economic turmoil of the Panic of 1837, triggered by speculative lending practices. His presidency is marked by rising tensions over slavery, with Van Buren navigating the divisive politics between abolitionists and slave states. He faces the Amistad case, a significant legal and moral issue regarding a group of mutinied slaves seeking freedom, complicating his stance on slavery. Van Buren oversees the enforcement of the Indian Removal Act, leading to the infamous Trail of Tears, greatly tarnishing his human rights record. He initiates measures to remedy the financial crisis, including the establishment of an independent treasury system to stabilize the currency. Despite domestic challenges, Van Buren maintains a policy of peace and neutrality in foreign affairs, avoiding entanglements in European conflicts. The divisiveness of his policies, especially on economic and slavery issues, leads to isolation from both his party and the electorate. Van Buren leaves office with a mixed legacy, later reassessed for his complex handling of profound national issues amidst a period of great turmoil. The implications of his presidency continue to influence discussions on presidential power, economic policy, and civil rights well into the future. William Henry Harrison delivers the longest inaugural address in history on a cold March day, setting the stage for his brief presidency. Harrison's ambitions for his presidency, including plans to reform the national banking system and settle ongoing territorial disputes. Harrison falls ill shortly after his inauguration, a development that alarms the nation and foreshadows his untimely demise. Just 1 month into his term, Harrison dies, becoming the first U.S. president to die in office, causing a constitutional crisis over presidential succession. Harrison's death leads to important discussions and eventual changes in the laws governing presidential succession and the swearing in of a new leader. Despite his short time in office, Harrison's presidency remains a subject of historical interest, emphasizing the vulnerabilities and challenges of early American leadership. The country mourns the loss of a president who served the shortest term, reflecting on the personal cost of public service. Harrison's death elevates the importance of presidential health as a vital aspect of leadership assessment and public transparency. Though brief, Harrison's tenure influenced subsequent presidencies by highlighting the necessary preparedness for the unexpected in office. John Tyler becomes president unexpectedly after the death of President Harrison, facing immediate skepticism on his legitimacy and political stance. Tyler pushes forward the annexation of Texas, a significant move that expands U.S. territory but exacerbates sectional tensions related to slavery. Tyler's extensive use of veto power alienates him from his own party, leading to an unprecedented entire cabinet resignation and attempts at impeachment. Tyler faces economic turmoil, opposing the creation of a new national bank, which places him at odds with business interests and his own previous political allies. Despite domestic challenges, Tyler secures notable foreign policy successes, including the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, improving relations with Britain. He supports infrastructure development, endorsing significant projects that aid in economic development despite his minimalistic government philosophy. Tyler leaves office with a mixed legacy, admired for his steadfastness, but criticized for his partisan conflicts and the exacerbation of pre-Civil War tensions. After his presidency, Tyler's alignment with the Confederacy during the Civil War further complicates his historical image. Historians continue to reassess Tyler's presidency, balancing his role in territorial expansion against his contributions to the nation's divisive landscape. James K. Polk assumes the presidency with a clear vision of expansion, setting the stage for significant territorial growth. Polk's firm stance leads to the Mexican-American War, resulting in substantial territorial gains, but also sparking controversy and conflict. Through adept negotiation, Polk secures the Oregon Territory up to the 49th parallel, avoiding conflict with Britain and doubling America's size. Polk's presidency also focuses on improving America's financial system through the Walker Tariff and the establishment of the independent Treasury. Despite his successes, Polk's expansionist policies receive criticism for exacerbating tensions over slavery and disregarding Native American rights. Polk's health deteriorates under the pressures of presidency, affecting his leadership in the later years of his term. Polk leaves office worn and exhausted, but having significantly reshaped America's political landscape through territorial expansion. Polk's legacy is marked by his effective fulfillment of manifest destiny, though his means and the long-term effects of expansion remain hotly debated topics. As history evolves, so does the interpretation of Polk's presidency, which is continually reassessed in light of its impacts on American identity and policy. Zachary Taylor, a national war hero, assumes the presidency with little political experience, but a strong public mandate following his successes in the Mexican-American War. Despite being a slaveholder, Taylor opposes the extension of slavery into the new territories, sparking considerable controversy and opposition from the South. Taylor supports the immediate admission of California as a free state, further intensifying national tensions around slavery and state rights. Taylor's administration faces challenges in managing relations with Native American tribes, with policies that both negotiate and confront. Taylor's administration is marked by significant cabinet turnover and disagreements, reflecting the internal conflicts that mirrored national divisions. Taylor's unexpected death in 1850 abruptly ends his presidency, leaving the country to confront its escalating crises without his leadership. Taylor's untimely death leaves a legacy characterized by unresolved tensions and unfulfilled promises, his potential as a peacemaker untested. Historians continue to debate Taylor's impact, analyzing how his military background influenced his short stint in office and the decisions he made. Taylor's commemoration in American history as a president during a crucial period highlights the enduring interest in his leadership and the paths he charted. Millard Fillmore unexpectedly becomes president after the sudden death of President Zachary Taylor, inheriting a nation on the brink of crisis. Fillmore's most significant act involves the signing of the Compromise of 1850, intended to stave off sectional conflict. Fillmore strengthens America's global standing through the Treaty of Kanagawa with Japan, opening trade and expanding influence in East Asia. He supports the development of infrastructure and advocates for the modernization of America's systems, from transportation to communication. As his term progresses, Fillmore faces increasing opposition from anti-slavery factions, impacting his political standing and effectiveness. His administration is critiqued for how it handles economic fluctuations, with some praising his cautious approach, while others deem it insufficient. Fillmore leaves office with a legacy complicated by his attempts to placate both sides of the slavery debate, contributing to his mixed historical reputation. After his presidency, Fillmore remains politically active, though never regaining the influence he once wielded, still advocating for his beliefs. Over time, Fillmore's presidency is reassessed, with historians debating his cautious leadership style and the long-term effects of his decisions during a crucial era. Franklin Pierce's inauguration marks the beginning of a presidency overshadowed by the rising clouds of division and discontent regarding slavery. Pierce's advocacy for expansion, including the Gadsden Purchase, aims to broaden U.S. territories, but also stirs conflicts and displaces indigenous populations. The enactment of the Kansas-Nebraska Act under his administration fuels the fire of sectionalism, leading to bloody conflicts and earning him considerable criticism. His administration makes some strides in foreign relations, including attempts to purchase Cuba, albeit unsuccessfully, showcasing his international aspirations. Pierce's economic measures receive mixed reactions, as some policies lead to short-term gains but fail to address underlying financial instability. His popularity wanes significantly due to his political stances, with public opinion turning sharply against him by the end of his term. Pierce leaves office with the nation more polarized. His presidency is often remembered for missed opportunities and escalating tensions. Historians and scholars continue to debate Pierce's impact, with some acknowledging his complex challenges, while others critique his exacerbated tensions. As time passes, reevaluations of Pierce's administration offer new insights into his decisions and their implications for the looming Civil War. James Buchanan takes office as the 15th President of the United States, facing a nation on the brink of division over slavery and states' rights. Buchanan's administration faces immediate challenge with the Dred Scott decision, testing his stance on slavery and exacerbating national conflict. He manages the Utah War, facing conflict with Mormon settlers, an episode reflecting his broader struggles with governance. His presidency is marred by the Panic of 1857, an economic downturn that he struggles to manage, causing widespread public dissatisfaction. Buchanan's approach to the Kansas Territory and its bid for statehood incites violence and political backlash, highlighting his ineffective leadership. Despite domestic failures, Buchanan engages in notable foreign diplomacy, including attempts to acquire new territories. As the threat of civil war escalates, Buchanan's lack of decisive leadership is widely criticized, leaving the Union on the precipice of war. He leaves office with a tarnished reputation, considered by many as one of the least effective presidents due to his inability to prevent the looming Civil War. Historians continue to debate Buchanan's presidency, examining the complexities of his actions and their implications for the American Civil War. Abraham Lincoln's inauguration vows to preserve the Union amidst the brewing tensions of civil war, asserting his commitment to American unity. Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring the freedom of slaves in Confederate states, marking a turning point in the Civil War and human rights. Lincoln delivers the Gettysburg Address, a profound speech that articulates the war's purpose and envisions a new birth of freedom for the nation. Throughout the Civil War, Lincoln demonstrates steadfast leadership, navigating military and political challenges to keep the North aligned with his goals. Lincoln proposes the 10% Plan for Reconstruction, seeking to reintegrate Confederate states and foster forgiveness, meeting mixed reception. The Homestead Act is signed, promoting Western expansion by offering land for development, aiming to boost the economy and increase national prosperity. Lincoln's assassination in 1865 shocks the nation, and his legacy as a martyr for unity and freedom is cemented in American history. Lincoln's ideologies and policies continue to influence American politics and society, with his visions for equality and democracy still relevant today. Lincoln's death prompts a period of national mourning and reflection, leading to a deeper appreciation of his efforts to unify and strengthen the nation. Andrew Johnson unexpectedly becomes president following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, facing a nation still divided and in the throes of Reconstruction. Johnson's approach to Reconstruction faces fierce criticism for being too lenient towards the South, sparking severe political conflict. Johnson frequently uses his veto power, especially against measures protecting African Americans, leading to overriding by Congress and deepening the rift. His violation of the Tenure of Office Act leads to his impeachment, marking a pivotal moment in U.S. political history. Johnson narrowly escapes removal from office by one vote, surviving a Senate trial that leaves his presidency weakened. Johnson's tenure also sees challenges in foreign policy, struggling to assert American interests abroad. After his presidency, Johnson's political career continues as he serves briefly in the Senate, a rare return after serving as president. Johnson leaves a divisive legacy, criticized for his Reconstruction policies and impeachment, but also noted for his resilience. Historians continue to debate his impact, reflecting on the complexities of his presidency and the enduring consequences of his actions. Ulysses S. Grant, celebrated Civil War general, assumes the presidency with the nation still reeling from war, tasked with unifying a fractured country. Grant vigorously supports the Civil Rights Act, fighting to secure equality for newly freed slaves amidst widespread resistance. His policies aim to improve relations with Native Americans through the peace policy, although results are mixed and often fraught with challenges. Grant's presidency is marred by economic difficulties, including the Panic of 1873, which plunges the nation into a severe depression. His administration is dogged by numerous corruption scandals, tarnishing the reputation of his presidency and overshadowing his reform efforts. Grant oversees significant expansion of the country's infrastructure, including railroads and telegraph lines, facilitating national growth and connectivity. Grant's legacy remains complex, revered as a military leader, yet often critiqued for his political leadership amid turbulent times. After his presidency, Grant continues to advocate for civil rights and global peace, demonstrating his enduring commitment to the principles he championed. Despite the controversies, Grant's ambitious policies and the moral leadership he aspired to continue to influence American history. Rutherford B. Hayes enters the White House after one of the most disputed elections in American history, setting a tumultuous tone for his presidency. Hayes controversially ends Reconstruction, withdrawing federal troops from the South, impacting the fate of newly freed African Americans. Despite challenges, Hayes is notable for advocating education and reform, focusing particularly on civil service and prison reforms. His term is marked by severe economic challenges, including the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, highlighting the vulnerability of the national economy. Hayes supports the Resumption Act, which stabilizes the currency, but also leads to debates on its impact on everyday Americans. He shows support for women's rights, bringing a progressive edge to his presidency amid other conservative decisions. Hayes leaves office with a complex legacy, admired for his reforms but criticized for his role in ending Reconstruction and its implications for racial justice. Retiring from politics, Hayes continued to engage in educational causes and advocate for social reforms until his death. Hayes's policies on education and civil service leave an enduring impact, influencing future administrations. James A. Garfield's inauguration, imbued with hope and promise, aimed at profound governmental reforms. Garfield championed the cause of civil service reform, striving to eradicate corruption within government ranks. He also fervently supported educational reforms and scientific advancements, laying the groundwork for future innovations. Garfield's administration was plagued by intense political rivalries that hindered many of his reformative efforts. His presidency abruptly ended by assassination, a catastrophic event that shockingly concluded his tenure. The nation mourned deeply, reflecting on what could have been a transformative presidency. Garfield's unfulfilled term left numerous initiatives unfinished, leaving many to wonder about the what-ifs. Garfield's legacy remains a poignant reflection of both the hope for reform and the fragility of leadership. Despite his short term, Garfield's principles of reform and meritocracy continue to influence U.S. government policies. Chester A. Arthur, initially an unexpected choice, assumes the presidency with the unexpected death of President Garfield. Arthur surprises many by advocating for and signing the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, which introduced merit-based government appointments. Under Arthur's leadership, the United States Navy undergoes significant modernization, preparing America for future global influence. His tenure is not without controversy, as Arthur signs the Chinese Exclusion Act, barring Chinese laborers, which reflected the racial prejudices of the time. Arthur pushes for tariff reforms to reduce surplus and aid the economy, though his efforts meet with mixed results. Personal health issues begin to overshadow his presidency, affecting his capacity to govern effectively as his term progresses. Despite initial skepticism, Arthur leaves office with a complex legacy, recognized for his reformative acts but also criticized for his policies like the Chinese Exclusion Act. Unable to secure his party's nomination for another term, Arthur's presidency ends without re-election. Arthur's presidency influences future governance, particularly in civil service, setting precedents that continue to shape American politics. Grover Cleveland, the only president elected for 2 non-consecutive terms, inspires with his initial 1885 inauguration. Cleveland's fierce use of the veto power to combat corruption and unnecessary government spending. Establishment of the first Interstate Commerce Commission, fostering fair trade practices across states. Cleveland's handling of the 1893 economic depression showed his commitment but met with mixed reactions. His intervention in the 1894 Pullman strike, a vital but contentious decision to maintain order and keep railroads running. His firm defense of the Monroe Doctrine emphasized U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere. Despite success, Cleveland's leadership was not without its critics, confronting numerous domestic issues. Significant impact through judicial appointments, enhancing the federal judiciary's role. Grover Cleveland's enduring legacy remains a tale of dedication, controversy, and a complex presidency. Benjamin Harrison's 1889 inauguration marked a journey focused on American growth and governmental reforms. He enacted the Sherman Antitrust Act, targeting monopolies and fostering competitive practices. His presidency championed conservation, leading to the establishment of numerous national forests. Strengthening the U.S. Navy, Harrison's policies positioned America as an emerging global naval power. His tenure also saw the McKinley Tariff, which, while protective of domestic industries, had mixed economic impacts. His foreign policy led to the first Pan-American Conference, fostering better relationships in the Western Hemisphere. Despite his ambitions, Harrison faced considerable challenges at home, including labor disputes and social unrest. Failing to secure re-election, Harrison's leadership was contested, reflecting public discontent with some policies. Harrison's presidency left a complex legacy marked by significant contributions to American policy and governance. William McKinley's ascent to presidency, marking the dawn of American expansionism. A staunch proponent of the gold standard, McKinley steered America through economic upheavals. McKinley's diplomatic foresight led to the open door policy, shaping future U.S.-China relations. Under McKinley's command, the U.S. emerged victorious, asserting itself as a global power. McKinley's administration marked by the controversial annexation of Hawaii, expanding U.S. territory. He upheld a vision of peace, advocating for international arbitration and cooperation. Despite successes, McKinley's presidency witnessed significant domestic challenges and controversies. McKinley was instrumental in transforming the role of the president in American governance. Sadly, McKinley's progressive presidency was cut short by an assassin, but his legacy endures in shaping modern America. Theodore Roosevelt's rise to the U.S. presidency, marked by youthful vigor and a new presidential era. A pioneer of conservation, Roosevelt established numerous national parks and forests. Introducing groundbreaking policies, Roosevelt tackled corporate monopolies and corruption. Spearheading the Panama Canal, Roosevelt reshaped global trade routes. His diplomatic efforts earned the Nobel Peace Prize, solidifying his international standing. Despite successes, Roosevelt faced resistance and critique within political circles. Politically robust, yet personally he battled numerous health issues affecting his role. Roosevelt's presidency concluded with a mixed legacy, remembered for his fierce advocacy and bold actions. Theodore Roosevelt's policies and persona continue to inspire leaders worldwide. Taft's presidency begins under the substantial shadow of his predecessor, Theodore Roosevelt, setting high public and political expectations. Dedicating his efforts to antitrust enforcement, Taft notably expanded the use of this tool beyond what Roosevelt had initiated. Taft's dollar diplomacy aimed to expand American enterprises overseas through economic influence rather than military involvement. Furthering civil service reforms, Taft worked towards a more merit-based system, although facing several hurdles. Perhaps Taft's most significant contribution was his influence on the judiciary, which was fully realized when he later became the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. The election of 1912 saw Taft's notable defeat as Roosevelt returned to politics, challenging Taft and eventually causing a rift in the Republican Party. Taft's presidency is often overshadowed by his successors and predecessors, yet his judicial insights and moderate policies continue to be re-evaluated for their impacts on modern America. Wilson's presidency begins with bold progressive reforms aimed at regulating big business and improving the average American's life. Wilson eventually supports the 19th Amendment, marking a pivotal moment in the fight for women's voting rights. The sinking of the Lusitania and subsequent events draw America into World War I under Wilson's reluctant leadership. Wilson establishes the League of Nations, envisioning a world united in peace but faces strong domestic opposition. Wilson's advocacy for the Treaty of Versailles stirs controversy and resistance at home, complicating its ratification. Wilson's second term is marred by racial tensions and health issues, casting a shadow over his final years in office. In contemporary times, Wilson's legacy is re-evaluated, balancing his international vision against his domestic policies and personal beliefs. Warren G. Harding's 1920 campaign, characterized by his promise of a return to normalcy post-World War I. Harding's administration pushed significant pro-business initiatives and tax reforms geared towards economic expansion. The 1921-1922 conference under Harding significantly impacted global naval disarmament and aimed to reduce worldwide naval tensions. The infamous Teapot Dome scandal severely tarnished Harding's presidency, involving bribery and corruption at the highest levels of government. Harding's personal life was marked by multiple controversies, including extramarital affairs that gained public attention. Harding's sudden death in 1923 led to widespread speculation and marked the abrupt end of his controversial presidency. Decades later, historians continue to debate Harding's legacy, weighing his administration's achievements against its significant ethical failings. Explore Calvin Coolidge's unexpected rise to the presidency following the sudden death of Warren G. Harding. Coolidge's presidency coincides with the Roaring Twenties, marked by significant economic prosperity. Coolidge implements tax cuts and strict fiscal policies, stimulating economic growth. Despite economic highs, Coolidge's era faced criticism for limited support to farmers and laborers. Coolidge signs the Immigration Act of 1924. His tenure is also marked by a lack of advancement in civil rights. Coolidge's foreign policy was characterized by a desire for peace and avoidance of entanglement. Reflecting on Coolidge's legacy after his decision not to seek re-election and his subsequent retirement. Herbert Hoover's landslide victory in the 1928 elections, as seen through optimistic public expectations. Shortly after Hoover's term began, the Great Depression struck, severely testing his administration's resilience. Hoover's interventions, like the Hoover Dam Project and federal loans to banks, attempted to mitigate economic despair. As the Depression worsened, public opinion turned sharply against Hoover, culminating in widespread dissatisfaction. The dramatic 1932 confrontation between the Bonus Army veterans and the government further damaged Hoover's reputation. Hoover's policy failures during the Depression led to a resounding defeat in the 1932 election against Franklin D. Roosevelt. Post-presidency, Hoover's legacy as a leader during one of America's toughest times remains mixed, with enduring debates over his policy's effectiveness. Dive into the inception of Roosevelt's transformative New Deal policies during the Great Depression. Explore how the Dust Bowl and economic downfall tested Roosevelt's presidency. The onset of World War II marks a decisive turn in Roosevelt's leadership. Roosevelt leads the nation with bold actions as global tensions escalate. The American home front transforms as wartime policies take effect. Inside looks at the high-stakes strategy meetings with Allied leaders. As the war ends, Roosevelt reflects on his presidency and the future of a peaceful world. Truman's sudden presidency begins with the death of FDR during a tumultuous time. Truman's order to drop atomic bombs on Japan marks a controversial and pivotal decision in wartime history. Truman's leadership sees the end of War II, ushering in a new era of American influence. Initiation of the Truman Doctrine signifies the start of the Cold War, positioning the U.S. against Soviet expansion. The Marshall Plan under Truman's administration provides crucial aid, helping rebuild war-torn Europe and solidifying U.S. leadership. Truman's presidency is marred by challenges like the Korean War and domestic civil rights issues. Truman's complex legacy: he departs from office with a transformative impact on global politics, yet with mixed domestic reviews. Explore the onset of Dwight D. Eisenhower's presidential journey. Trace Eisenhower's rise to the presidency from a military leader. Highlight Eisenhower's pivotal role in World War II. Discover how Eisenhower revolutionized America with the interstate highway system. Delve into Eisenhower's foreign policy during the intense Cold War period. Eisenhower's initial steps in the space race that shaped future explorations. Assess Eisenhower's impact on civil rights movements of his time. Review the economic ups and downs during Eisenhower's administration. Reflect on Eisenhower's prescient warnings in his farewell address about the military-industrial complex. John F. Kennedy's inauguration sets the stage for transformative leadership. JFK establishes the Peace Corps, embracing global humanitarian efforts. Kennedy propels the U.S. into the space race with a mission to reach the moon. Amidst adversity, JFK supports pivotal civil rights reforms. The Cuban Missile Crisis tests Kennedy's diplomatic resolve. An assassination abruptly ends his visionary tenure. Lyndon B. Johnson gains public trust to become the 36th President of the United States. Passage of revolutionary civil rights laws under LBJ's leadership. Introduction of Medicare and Medicaid to support American healthcare needs. Johnson's efforts to alleviate poverty introduced numerous social service initiatives. Escalation of the Vietnam War becomes the major setback of Johnson's presidency. Johnson's decision not to seek re-election mirrors the division and controversy of his tenure. An in-depth look at Nixon's early years and his ascent to the presidency, setting the stage for his impact on America. Highlighting Nixon's pivotal policies in foreign affairs and environmental legislation. An exploration of the deep divisions Nixon created within American society and politics. The unraveling of the Watergate scandal, a pivotal moment that captivated and shocked the nation. The public's growing distrust in Nixon as more details of political espionage and deceit surfaced. The climax of Nixon's career, his unprecedented resignation from the presidency. Examining the aftermath of Nixon's resignation and its lasting impact on American politics. A reflection on the historical significance of Nixon's presidency within the broader context of American history. A contemplative conclusion that questions what Americans can learn from Nixon's story. Gerald Ford steps into the presidency, taking the oath after Nixon's resignation. Ford stabilizes a nation rocked by political scandal, vowing transparency. Ford's pardon of Nixon sparks debate, but aims to heal national divisions. Ford faces a crippling economy, introducing whip inflation now as a solution. Ford's term ends, marking a presidency of efforts to mend a fractured nation. Time lends perspective, recognizing Ford's contributions and leadership during turmoil. Jimmy Carter takes oath, promising a presidency of integrity amidst America's bicentennial. Carter's Camp David Accords bring momentary peace to the Middle East, showcasing his diplomacy. Carter faces the energy crisis head-on, advocating for fuel efficiency and alternative sources. Inflation and unemployment mar Carter's term, causing public dissatisfaction. The Iranian hostage crisis becomes Carter's defining challenge, testing his presidency. Despite controversies, Carter's commitment to peace and human rights is unwavering. America stands divided on Carter's presidency. Some hail, others criticize his tenure. Carter's humanitarian work post-presidency earns him global admiration and a Nobel Peace Prize. Reflecting on Carter's complex legacy, a presidency of both significant triumphs and trials. Explore Ronald Reagan's inauguration, marking the start of a significant yet divisive presidency. Reagan's economic policies, dubbed Reaganomics, aimed to reduce taxes and government spending. Reagan's aggressive stance against the USSR intensified the Cold War, but also paved the way for its end. Major foreign accomplishments included the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with the USSR. While economic growth soared, critics point to increased deficits and inequality as significant downsides. Reagan's social policies faced criticism for lack of support to minority communities and handling of the AIDS crisis. The Iran-Contra affair and other controversies highlight the complexities and challenges of Reagan's presidency. Reagan's presidency leaves a mixed legacy, with strong ideological divides on his impact and policies. As the Reagan presidency concludes, America reflects on a period of significant change, growth, and challenge. Inauguration Day marks the beginning of George H.W. Bush's journey to lead a nation. Bush navigates the end of the Cold War, strengthening international ties. The Americans with Disabilities Act reshapes societal inclusion, a decisive military action that stamps Bush's foreign policy approach. Facing recession, Bush's decisions on economy provoke mixed reactions. Bush champions significant environmental protections, leaving a green legacy. Tackling national issues amid growing societal divisions. As challenges arise, Bush's leadership is put to the test. The end of an era, Bush reflects on his presidency and its impact. Bill Clinton's electoral victory introduced a new era of promise and potential. Under Clinton, America experienced unprecedented economic growth, defining his legacy. Clinton's ambitious but ultimately unsuccessful healthcare reform marked a significant chapter. Clinton's efforts for educational reform sought to prepare every American child for the 21st century. Clinton's tenure saw successful diplomatic efforts, particularly in Northern Ireland and the Middle East. Not all was smooth sailing. Certain policies and reforms sparked intense debate and dissatisfaction. Clinton's presidency faced its greatest challenge with his impeachment trial, yet he was acquitted. Despite controversies, Clinton left office with high approval ratings, a testament to his resilience. Clinton's presidency reminds us of the complexities of leadership in a rapidly changing world. The inauguration of George W. Bush marked a new chapter in American history, setting the stage for an era of complex challenges and significant achievements. Responding to the tragedy of September 11th, Bush's leadership through crisis defined a significant part of his presidency. From tax cuts to education reforms, Bush's policies aimed to reflect his commitment to American prosperity and education. The Bush administration faced heavy criticism for its handling of Hurricane Katrina, highlighting the struggles in crisis management. The late years of Bush's presidency were marked by economic turmoil, leading to the 2008 financial crisis. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan became central and controversial aspects of Bush's foreign policy, with lasting impacts. As history reflects on Bush's presidency, the American people continue to debate his successes and failures. Bush's post-presidential activities, including humanitarian work, shape his ongoing contribution to society. The presidency of George W. Bush continues to elicit mixed emotions, signifying an era of both commendable achievements and undeniable controversies. The journey begins as Barack Obama ascends to presidency, radiating hope and change. Obama's pursuit of health care reform culminates in the landmark Affordable Care Act. Obama's diplomatic efforts are recognized globally, marking a high point of his presidency. The administration faces the daunting task of steering the country through financial turmoil. Obama's environmental policies and the challenges they faced, underscored by global urgency. A look into Obama's foreign policy, the victories, the setbacks, and the unending complexities. The Affordable Care Act faced fervent opposition, testing Obama's resolve and leadership. Obama's stance on marriage equality and human rights leaves a lasting impact. The end of an era, Obama's presidency is reflected upon, the accomplishments, the setbacks, and the future. The saga begins as Donald Trump secures the presidency, amidst one of the most divisive elections in history. Trump's economic policy reshapes the U.S. tax system, aiming for growth but sparking debate. Navigating the complexities of global politics, Trump's foreign policy leaves a distinct mark. Trump's hardline immigration policies and the building of a border wall become central and contentious elements of his presidency. The Trump administration's responses to the COVID-19 pandemic face widespread scrutiny and concern. Trump's impact on the judiciary, with the appointment of 3 Supreme Court justices, reshapes the American legal landscape. Trump's tenure sees significant economic growth, yet faces challenges including trade wars and the pandemic-induced recession. Trump's unconventional governance, marked by a unique communication style, leaves a polarized nation. The tumultuous end of Trump's presidency, marked by an impeachment and stormy transition, reflects a period of high political drama. Joe Biden takes the oath, promising to heal and unite a fractured nation. A decisive push for vaccine distribution amidst a global pandemic. Initiating ambitious stimulus packages to revive the American economy. Rejoining the Paris Agreement, leading the battle against climate change. Signing a historic bill to improve infrastructure, creating jobs and opportunities. Advancing rights and social equity, striving for a more inclusive society. Facing hurdles and opposition amid both domestic and foreign policy challenges. Navigating complex global dynamics, renewing old alliances, and forging new ones. Reflecting on victories and setbacks, looking forward with resilience and hope. President Biden labels Israel's Gaza campaign as over the top and pushes for increased humanitarian aid. Tensions rise as more Democrats challenge Biden's approach, demanding a policy pivot. Debate intensifies over the implications of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. The media plays a crucial role in shaping public perception and pressure on the government. Anticipation builds for a potential shift in U.S. policy regarding the Israel-Gaza situation.